Welcome back here for the Week 2 recap, Week 3 game picks here on College Basketball Review Studio. That's Dan Siegel. That's Ariel Puderman. Before we get going, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to sub for all of the content that we have here. College basketball all year round, all off-season round. And during the season, like I mentioned, we do our just breakdowns of what happened the week before, look ahead to the week ahead with game picks. We got a special guest as well helping us pick the games of the week. We always do 9 games plus an extra game of the week, so that'll be later on in the episode. But guys, first we want to start. We have a new segment that we're bringing in. We're giving out some awards every week, and we got some famous coaches, players that we involved in these awards. Dan and Ariel, you did a good job in coming up with this. I know, Dan, this was kind of your baby as well, so props to you here. It's the Jay Wright Award, the Kenny Payne Award, the Bill Walton Award. You might be able to think of what that means, but we'll explain it as it goes along. We got the weekly Jay Wright Award. This is something wholesome that we saw during the past week of college basketball. Something good. Can be a team, a player, can be really anything that you think fits this. But Dan, since this is your child here, the Jay Wright Award, who you got with the first ever Jay Wright Award here on College Basketball Review Studio? This is big. Don't mess it up.
And it's going to go to the Duke Blue Devils and John Shire.
Oh,
everybody wants
Do
to
you
hear.
have are you going to be working at ESPN soon? Are they giving you a contract?
I'm taking a
Are you
different
getting
angle
those?
on this. Taking a different angle on this. I like how they traveled to Army on Veterans Day. I think that I actually love the concept of big name power conference schools going to mid-major arenas. I think in a perfect world, every power conference team does that every couple of years. But Duke going to Army on Veterans Day, by all accounts, just an awesome experience. They honored Coach K in the pregame. Coach K obviously coached for both Duke and Army. He got a banner racing, I believe, in the pregame. And Duke ended up winning this game by a score of 114-59. Some people are like, oh, that's disrespectful, whatever. I think that's just the discrepancy in talent and size between these two teams if you saw it on TV. But that was the expectation. Just a great wholesome experience. I'm glad Duke did it and was able to make it work.
Ariel, who's your winner of your weekly Jay Wright Award?
yeah, this is a little bit recency bias because I watched this game right before we got on. But David Castillo from Kansas State, look, he was the third highest recruit in school history last year as a freshman. He was horrible, to put it lightly. He shot 22% from the field, 25% from three, and he was a negative defender. This year, something completely switched. He must have really put in work in this offseason because so far through 3 games, he's shooting 16 for 21, which is 76% from the field, and 10 for 13 from three, which is 77% from the field for 3 games. So that's a pretty good sample size. Obviously, it's against UNC Greensboro, Bellarmine, and Cal, but the offseason work has definitely shown, and you could really see the difference. And that makes this Kansas State team a pretty dangerous team. If a guy like David Castillo can pair with Haggerty and Nate Johnson, they can become a dangerous trio.
I got my weekly award as well, and Ariel, you challenged me for this one because I was going to talk about the freshmen, and you said, hey, you said that last week. So, okay, even though we could talk about freshmen every week on this podcast, you guys are going to hate the phrase Rochester, New York for the rest of this episode. Just warning you. Because obviously that's my day job, sports reporter in Rochester. And there was a game, a D3 game, that was kind of crazy. And you guys told me to put this. So this is your words. This is your fault, not mine. But it was between Nazareth and RIT. It was a tie game. Nazareth missed a 3 in the corner. RIT got the rebound. There were like 4 seconds left. So I understand wanting to push it. And their player just tried to push it. And it got tipped out of his hand. It ended up falling into the Nazareth guy's hand and had just enough time right when he caught it. Barely could even put the ball down. Just had to put the ball right up. Ended up making it from, just inside half court for the win. It was the number 1 play on SportsCenter the next morning. So that's the Jay Wright Award. And fitting here, because do any of you know where Jay Wright started his college coaching career?
I don't know.
University of Rochester. So
okay.
There we go. Stan Van Gundy, Jeff Van Gundy also had their starts at Nazareth, for what it's worth. So a lot of basketball in this area. And like I said, you guys will probably hate me by the end of this episode. But we will move on for our weekly Kenny Payne Award, something bad or disastrous. We all know that Kenny Payne's tenure at Louisville was not great. Obviously, wishing him well the rest of the way. Like, this is not an award to say, hey, Kenny Payne, like, we dislike you or something like that. This is just calling it what it is. He did not do well at Louisville.
And I'm keeping it in conference in the ACC, and I'm going to Boston College. This has just been an absolute disaster class of a program. They lost to NEC regular season champion last year, but a much worse team this year in Central Connecticut State, 60-59. You do not lose to Central Connecticut State as a power conference school. I'm sorry. Like, that just can't happen. For a brief moment, actually, the ACC had 2 total games that they lost, and they were both by Boston College. Boston College lost the opening night to Florida Atlantic. Of course, a couple other teams lost in the ACC. We'll get to that later. But, like, year 5 of the Earl Grant era, and it's gone no better than the Jim Christian era. It's just been horrible for Boston College. They're dead last in men's basketball. For good measure, they're dead last in women's basketball and football as well in the ACC. So it's really not going well in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, definitely is not, and it's also not going well in the Mountain West. Now, I will say this doesn't include San Diego State and Utah State, because both of them have started the season well as expected. But in a conference where every win matters, especially while you're fighting for those at-large spots, they've done a terrible job of doing so. We start with UNLV. They're 1-2 this season. They lost to UT Martin and Montana. Both UT Martin's actually been good this year, and we'll talk about them a little bit later. But both games they should have absolutely won. Boise State, we talked about last week with their loss to D2 Hawaii Pacific. Grand Canyon, another team that was going to fight for an at-large. They lost to Youngstown State at home. And then Nevada, they went to overtime against Southern Illinois, a team that they should have beaten easily. So far, really tough start for the conference. It's looking like this could be a 2 to 3 bid league, which is pretty bad for this conference, considering we've hit that 4 or 5 mark pretty consistently. But if anything is showing how the games have gone so far, it's going to be a long season for the Mountain West fans.
I'm going with Morehead State here for my Kenny Payne Award, a 1-3 start. Guys, it really just has to do with Morehead State is one of those teams, like, they're not on like a Gonzaga level, obviously. I wouldn't even put them on like a Liberty or a College of Charleston level with or like a Furman or a High Point, the teams that like recently just seem to always be good. But Morehead State over the past about 20 years or so, they've made 20-win seasons about half the time. They've made multiple NCAA tournaments. They're off to a 1-3 start, and it just seems like this program is in for a very, very rough year. Lost by 16 at Wake Forest, lost 120-81 to Georgia, and then Clemson blows them out 83-56. Look, you got 3 road games of that magnitude in a 5-day stretch. Maybe you don't hold it against them, but the thing is, the first game of the season, they beat Midway 89-84. That is not a Division I program. Let's look at Midway last season. They went 10-15 and 7-9 in conference. The year before, Midway went 8-17 overall. So you got Morehead State. By the way, Bellarmine beat Midway last year by 41, and James Madison destroyed him by like 30+. So Morehead State, you're losing 3 games. You're getting blown out against power conference comp. That's okay and all, but when you're going to have that close of a game against a non-Division I school, now it raises a lot of questions. Morehead State, I want to get it right, but I think there was one year when I first started watching college basketball. Yeah, 05-06. This was like the first year I really remember, and I had a video game, and I thought, wow, this team is terrible because they went 4-23 that season. Maybe they're on track for another year. For a kid out there that's watching college hoops for the first time this season, this could be the team that you look at and be like, wow, they're very, very bad. But hopefully for their sake, they can figure it out. Let's move on to the Bill Walton Award. Again, rest in peace to Bill Walton, but something weird or unique that you saw in college basketball this week. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go to that Bradley and UT Martin game. And it was a very bizarre, just specific play. UT Martin had a player that just bricked a 3 from the corner, and it went like too long, and it went off the backboard, bounced off of a Bradley defender's head, and went into the basket. Like incidental soccer style, just the weirdest basket you probably will ever see. For those wondering, by the way, it counted as a 2-point field goal, even though the last time a UT Martin player touched it, it was behind the 3-point arc. But it was a 2-point field goal, and it went to not the player that shot the ball, but the player that was closest to the defender under the basket. So very, very interesting caveat, and I guess a scores table rule that I never knew about. But when you're Bradley and that happens, it's obviously just not your night. UT Martin ends up winning that game 78-67. I think that's their second win of the year, UT Martin, that is, when they were 15-plus point underdogs. And the Skyhawks, right? UT Martin Skyhawks, 3-0 on the season. They're looking dangerous in the Ohio Valley.
All right, what do you got?
I think we have a Ted Lasso spinoff where a soccer coach comes and coaches basketball, and maybe that's part of their strategy. And UT Martin and Bradley are just ahead of the game. But I got to talk about another team in North Texas. Now, I want to give some context. On Sunday, they're up 14 against Loyola Chicago at half, who we could have a whole nother segment on them, but they blew that lead and need a buzzer beater to beat them. Fast forward to Wednesday night, they're leading Oregon State this time by 13 with 7 minutes to go. They allow Oregon State to come all the way back and tie it with 3 seconds left. They have the ball to win, though. Guy goes down the court, calls a timeout. Only problem is they have no timeouts left. It's a technical foul. Oregon State makes 2 free throws and wins the game. So truly disastrous week for North Texas. And you really don't see the Chris Webber play really ever happen just because communication and just general IQ. But unfortunately for North Texas, it just wasn't meant to be. And they've got a lot of off-season or in-season work to do, especially late in the second half.
Guys, I have something else from the Bradley UT Martin game. His name is Jaquan Johnson, plays for Bradley. Arguably the most up and down stat line I've ever seen in a box score. He was 3 for 15 from the field. So, just terrible shooting night. Missed all of his 3-point attempts. But he was 8 for 10 from the free throw line. So even though he couldn't buy a shot from the field, he was making all his free throws. He led Bradley with 7 rebounds, and he led Bradley with 4 assists. And he also led the game, and probably this season, this is not Hannah Hidalgo with the 16 steals, but he had 9 steals in the game. So talk about doing everything you can for your team, ripping the ball away, pulling down the rebounds, finding your teammates, hitting your free throws, but you go 3 of 15 from the floor. So whatever. And it's also, to make it even worse, the game before he had 33 points against Central Michigan and could not miss. So I bet they wish that would carried over one more game. Funny that we had 2 totally separate things from that game, Dan, but both deserving of our Bill Walton Award.
Yeah, I'd love to see a rebound steals double for somebody. I don't know if that's ever happened. Someone could look that up for us, but
probably in the NBA or like Oscar Robertson or something like that. But that'd be good. Let's move on to our takeaways. We do conference takeaways for the Power Conference and the mid-major, and we will go straight to the ACC this past week. Dan, what did you see out of the ACC?
So ACC pretty much looking better than I think even I would have expected. A solid start for the conference. Team of the week has to be Virginia Tech. They, I think, looked overlooked in the preseason. They were borderline like top half of the league considerably, and I think they definitely should be looked at as a tournament team right now. They've got obviously the star freshman, so to speak, in Nicholas Avdalas, who has just been absolutely incredible. Just that do it all, like really good with the ball in his hands, but he's like 6'7" or 6'8", and he's just absolute scorer from every place on the court. They won this week 107-101 over Providence in overtime. They blew out St. Joe's, which is pretty impressive the way they did it. So Virginia Tech, definitely the team of the week. Louisville had a statement win over Kentucky, of course, 96-88. Again, they only shot 32.5% from 3. So there's another gear down there. And Pat Kelsey has himself another legit freshman. If he finds a way to feed all these mouths, look out for the Louisville Cardinals. They could be even better. North Carolina, big win over Kansas, 87-74. I'm a lot less hesitant on UNC now. And then Wake Forest, right? More of the same tease potentially, right? The 85-84 loss in overtime to Michigan. Once again, Wake Forest looks very talented, but we keep saying this under Steve Forbes. This is the team that's going to get right. This is the team that just needs that one step, that one big moment to step into greatness, and they just can't get it done, even though they look great. Like, I think they had horrible play calls out of timeouts with the chance to win in overtime and also a chance to win regulation. They had a pretty bad play call and a pretty bad execution. So there was chances to win. They did not get it done. The bad, we already talked about Boston College. I think Georgia Tech looks horrible too, but they're 3-0, no harm, no foul. There's my ACC.
I'll move on to the Big East next. And guys, that's going to be pretty quick for me. The Big East might be a mid-major. I know we do our mid-major takeaways, but maybe we just loop this in with that for the next episode. Creighton went out and got blown out by Gonzaga. DePaul got beat by Buffalo. Georgetown looked not good against Binghamton. Marquette, again, these are all since the last time we recorded. This was obviously one of our game picks for last week, and it really didn't need to be because Marquette got blown out by Indiana and Xavier got blown out by Santa Clara. Only bright spot maybe is that Seton Hall is 4-0, and I'll take that. Onto the Big 12, Ariel, because there's nothing else to talk about out of the Big East. The conference is that bad right now.
And the Big 12 is looking pretty good. Only one bad loss the whole season. That's TCU in week 1, day 1. So always good when your team isn't suffering or your conference isn't suffering any of those mid-major losses. One team I wanted to shout out, though, is Oklahoma State. This was a team that wasn't in that top tier of Big 12 teams in the preseason, but they've definitely looked like it. They absolutely blew out Texas A&M on Sunday, and they're doing without the guys who are supposed to be their top performers. Anthony Roy hasn't played. Kanye Cleary struggled a bunch, and Isaiah Coleman hasn't really produced much. Victorious Miller from LSU is averaging 22 a game for them, and Jalen Curry, Dan's guy from UMass, he's averaging 12, 6, and 5. So really impressed by this Oklahoma State team. I'm excited to see them play a couple more of those bigger matchups to really evaluate how good they are. And then I also just wanted to give a shout out to Cincinnati and West Virginia. Both of them win their rivalry games against Dayton and Pittsburgh. Always good to get that win, especially West Virginia. They lost their last 2 to Pittsburgh. So Big 12's looking strong. We have a lot of big games coming up this week that we'll talk about. But yeah, all good things from the Big 12.
All right, we will move on to the mid-major takeaways from week 2. Dan, we're going back to you. What do you got for this one?
Yeah, so Ariel already mentioned it, talked about it in depth, so I'm not going to go into it too much more. But the Mountain West is struggling, not the way they kind of want to go out before half their conference gets eaten up by the new Pac-12. I will say New Mexico looks the part, so maybe include them on the mix. Big game for New Mexico against New Mexico State. I campaigned to have that on the game picks. Did not work out. We're not picking that game. But also, what do you know? The top 2 in the West Coast Conference, the WCC, are good again, and I don't know why I doubted it, but Gonzaga beats Creighton 90-63. They look awesome. St. Mary's is steamrolling in their competition. They scored 84, 87, and 90 points respectively against their first 3 games, against their first 3 teams. All of them teams that have a pulse. So, we were really bullish, or we were really, skeptical on this St. Mary's offense, but they're looking good. Santa Clara, we talked about them. A couple more teams to highlight. Akron, 3-0, a 104-69 win over Princeton on Friday. They look like a team that could just run away with the MAC. Davidson also 3-0 with wins over Washington State and Charlotte. Davidson, a program that was in the basement of the A-10 under Bob McKillop's son, Matt, for a while. So maybe they're a riser there and could finally build some momentum in this era of the program. And then finally, George Washington, Ariel's favorite team this year. 3-0, wins over Maine by 20, big win over South Florida, and a win over American by 40 points. Another A-10 program that has traditionally been bottom half of the league, but they've been very solid this year, looking to prove ourselves right in our preseason CBB rank, and they have Old Dominion on Saturday. So that's another solid program, and that's really exciting.
Go Colonials.
Yeah, very, very under the radar game, which again, we won't be picking, but I had to shout out the game.
I'll go to the Big 10 takeaways. I'm not going to go through every team because there's so many teams, and a lot of them have really yet to play this week when you look at the schedules. But obviously, since the last time we podcasted, different story. I'll start out real quick with Indiana. We thought that maybe it would just be Tucker DeVries, and then everyone else, maybe Lamar Wilkerson, would step up because it's tough to look at these mid-major guys and be like, how are they going to be in a power conference? Lamar Wilkerson might be – him and DeVries might be the best duo in all of college basketball at this point. He has 1 turnover all season. He's averaging over 20 points a game. He's dishing out when he needs to do. He just looks totally in control. That Indiana looks for real. I'm not even saying that as Indiana is back or whatever. Indiana looks for real. But 2 teams that are scaring me a little bit, Washington looked a little bit suspect against Denver when they played them, and then when they play at Baylor, I know it was a 3-game-in-a-week thing, and Ariel, I feel bad because I really like this team as well. Like Hans Steinbach is very, very good, very talented guy. But Washington, obviously, with that loss to Baylor, big game coming up today, Friday at Washington State. Like that's a game you kind of need to win. You can't afford to drop that after missing a chance against Baylor. And then you got Minnesota. Look, getting blown out on Thursday by Missouri, 83-60. It looks like this is the season that Dennis Gates, puts it back because Missouri always goes up and down with Gates there, and it looks like maybe this will be an up season for them. Obviously, Minnesota as well. Like you played 2 games before that, and one was to Gardner-Webb, who lost to a non-Division I school. So you kind of throw that out the window. Like it's not looking like a good start for Nico Medved and the Golden Gophers. But 2 teams that it's looking good for. Purdue got the win over Alabama. Probably should have led with that because that was on Thursday. That was on the day that we're recording, although we're into Friday right now on my time zone. But regardless, a couple hours ago from when we're talking right now, Purdue goes and beats Alabama. There's one thing I want to look at in particular. Braden Smith took over the game, right? He had 29 points. He led all scorers in this one. But here's the thing, guys. He only had 4 assists. Now, if you're tracking his breaking the assists record, not a good rate there. He better hope Purdue gets on a run because he probably just put himself behind the schedule a little bit there. But if you're looking at this Purdue team and how good they might be, that's a good sign that they can win where Braden Smith doesn't have to be distributing at that high of a rate. Like guys can take over in one-on-one, situations. Bench guys can come in. They had 16 assists in the team. They were moving the ball around. Not every Braden Smith pass needs to lead to a bucket. It can also lead to a hockey assist. It can also get the offense rolling. And then down the stretch, he had that pump fake that he was just laughing about. Like he knew he had it. He knew he was going to the line to help put this game away. Purdue, Braden Smith, just a lot to like there. And then Illinois with the win earlier in the week over Texas Tech. Look, that was a high-level basketball game. When JT Toppin goes off for 35 on your head and you still win the game, that says a lot about what Illinois might be able to do this season. Stojakovic looks like he's in the right place there. Look, David Mirkovic, Zvonimir Ivisic. I mean, this team has guys. They're without the other Ivisic guys still. They only got one of them playing right now, and they're still winning a game against Texas Tech. Illinois looks for real. Guys, that's my Big Ten takeaways.
And then I'll close us out with the SEC here. I think last year the big theme was just how they dominate the non-conference, and they were just beating all the top 25 teams in other conferences. And so far, hasn't been the case. They're 1-7 against AP top 25 teams. Mississippi State, we saw lost to Iowa State pretty comfortably. Same with A&M to Oklahoma State. Texas lost to Duke on the second day of the season. Oklahoma got destroyed by Gonzaga. Kentucky lost a close game to Louisville in a rivalry game. Florida, Arizona, obviously. Then Arkansas, Michigan State over the weekend. Alabama did beat St. John's. That's their only top 25 win to start the season, but then they lost to Purdue tonight. So not a great start. Look, obviously a lot of these games are early in the season with a lot of new teams, but definitely not what you want to see. The 2 teams that are looking pretty strong who maybe haven't played those top 25 teams are Vanderbilt and Georgia. Since the season started in Bartorvik, Vanderbilt is 7th in the country. Georgia's 11th. Now, Syracuse is 4th in that ranking, so don't look too deeply into it, even though I think they look a lot better than we think, and I think Matt agrees with that. But I think coming up this week, there's obviously a couple big games that we'll talk about in a second, but they need to start winning some of those to improve their overall standing as a conference, because even though they're going to beat up on each other in conference play and get those quality wins, if they're not winning these games, then they're going to hold a little bit less effect in March when you're looking at those resumes in the net and everything like that.
100%. Those are our conference takeaways here out of the ACC, Big East, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, and of course mid-major as well, making sure we're fitting in all we can. We got a lot more to fit in for our episode here. We're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, we have our special guest, and we're going to pick some games. So stick with us. All right, and welcome back here on College Basketball Review, CBB Review Studio. I'm Matt Majinski again, Dan Siegel, Ario Puderman, and we welcome in our special guest of this week's Pick'em. That is Ivetta Abramyan. She covers college basketball. You can catch her on Twitter as well. I like to say, there's like the big people that cover college basketball, ESPN, and there's all us college hoops junkies. and we're really watching every game. Like, enough of all this power conference. We're watching the mid-majors. And I know, Ivetta, you go to a lot of games. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're not always media, but you're always going to a bunch of games, right?
Right.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of fun covering college basketball when we can, and in any way that we can as well. But obviously, you're in tune with what's going on, so we'll get right to our picks. We got 9 of them, and then we got our game of the week. We're going to go around in this order. So, Ivetta, we'll go to you first, Ariel, Dan, and then I'll go, and then we'll wrap it up again with our game of the week. But first game we're picking, Arizona and UCLA. This is Friday. All these times are Eastern time zone. This is at 10 on Peacock. Ivetta, what are you thinking in this game between 2 former Pac-12 teams here?
Yeah, a little rekindled rivalry here. I really like Arizona here. I think they win pretty handedly. This isn't a true road game because this is at the Clippers Arena, but UCLA hasn't played a team in the top 200, so I have no reason to think that UCLA can beat a team that's already beaten the reigning national champion, even with Donovan Dent coming back. So I really like Arizona here.
Yeah, my big question is if Dent is at 100%. He will be playing, but obviously when you're not 100%, that's going to make an impact. So I like Arizona here.
Yeah, same here. Arizona, just the straight up better team. Send it to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I like UCLA, but it's just their depth. We've talked about it before. It scares me. And Jaden Bradley looks like he's on a mission this year. I always got to shout out Rochester guys when I can as well. So big shout out to Jaden doing his thing in Arizona. Let's move on to a Saturday game. Clemson at Georgetown. This is also on Peacock. This is at noon. Clemson out of the ACC, Georgetown out of the Big East, as we know. Ivetta, who you going with this matchup?
Clemson's resume so far is even worse than UCLA's, but one of the teams they beat just lost to a D2, as you all know, Gardner-Webb, RIP. So this is a step up in class for Clemson. On the road, it'll be a slower, more defensive game, but I think Clemson will have to coax KJ Lewis into foul trouble because I think he's going to be the difference maker that wins Georgetown the game.
3 of us all picked Georgetown to beat Maryland last week, and the 3 of us were all right. So I got to keep going with Georgetown. I love their guards.
Yeah, riding with Georgetown. Clemson, a lot of people pick them bottom half-ish of the ACC. I think they are going to find a way to finish a couple spots higher than consensus. But in this game, I like Georgetown.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going off of Georgetown, did not have an easy way with Binghamton. And I'm showing a little bit of New York bias here. Binghamton is very, very bad. They almost lost to RIT. RIT can barely get a winning record in Division III. So I know that's like that weird transitive property there, but I just don't like that Georgetown played that way against Binghamton. I do like Clemson's bigs. I like what Brad Brownell does there. I think Clemson gets the win in this one. Let's go to a really fun one on Saturday at 2. Probably my favorite matchup of this weekend because Buzz Williams and Maryland going at Marquette. It's Buzz Williams' first time coaching at Marquette since he left there a little over a decade ago. Ivetta, who's winning this one?
Well, both teams lost the only time they were truly tested so far this season, so a bigger sample size would help. But I have to take Marquette here. They won by 4 last year at Maryland. It was a tight game the whole way. I expect a similar outcome with Marquette getting the win on their home court this year.
I'll go the other way. I think Maryland's going to win just with their with their bigs. I think that they're going to dominate the glass. Something that they really struggled with against Indiana. So give me Maryland with, I don't know if this is an upset, but probably a small upset there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd even consider that an upset. I mean, Marquette was just a disaster against Indiana. I think that Maryland's going to pull this one out on the road, I guess, by 4 or 5 points.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not too impressed by Maryland so far. Obviously, you can't be impressed with Marquette either. So whoever wins this game is going to pick up a win that they really, really need. Whoever loses this, I don't think it's time to panic, but you definitely are going to have some question marks there. I'm going to go with Marquette in this one, though. I think Chase Ross takes over at home. I think the Marquette crowd's going to be into it with Buzz obviously returning there. And it wasn't the only time I'm going to do it this show. And this is not I'm going to do it again just so you guys are prepared. But I'm shouting out another Rochester guy, Demarius Owens on Marquette. So this is just going to be throughout the show. So just plug your ears if you don't want to hear it anymore. We will go with Nevada and Santa Clara Saturday at 7 on ESPN+. 2 mid-majors here, if you want to call it here. Ivetta, who you got in this one?
So I got to go Santa Clara here at home. I'm actually really looking forward to this game. Both teams are undefeated, but Santa Clara has a better resume. They have a lot of depth. They got a ton of depth, and they're better in pretty much every metric. They attack the paint. They take high percentage shots. And then Nevada has got to be gassed after that OT win against Southern Illinois last night. So Broncos are bust for me.
Matt, you got one more Rochester mention, and you're in trouble the rest of the episode. Just a warning. But yeah, like you said, both teams are in different spots right now. Santa Clara just had a dominant win over Xavier. Nevada needed overtime to beat Southern Illinois. And the weird thing about sports is it seems so obvious, but it goes the other way sometimes. We kind of saw the Purdue and Alabama tonight, where Purdue was struggling with Oakland. Alabama was coming off winning St. John's. Purdue wins that game. Obviously, these two teams aren't in the same caliber, but I think Nevada just somehow gets it done here.
Yeah, I mean that's fine logic. I still like Santa Clara. Nevada just looked horrible last night. Lots of defensive breakdowns. We were all watching. It was really funny. 3 different time zones and just was it Missouri Valley Mountain West hoops on a late Wednesday night. What do you want more? But this one, I think Santa Clara pulls it out.
Yeah, clearly we have something wrong with us if that's what we were doing with our Wednesday nights there. I have Santa Clara in this one. Look, their win over Xavier. I know that Xavier is probably the worst team in the Big East, but they're still a Big East team, and Santa Clara, they're not a bad program. Look, I mean, I think that this is a program that's been on the rise. They've definitely been doing better over the past couple of years, if you want to call it that. And I don't know what Nevada's looking like this year. They're just against SIU, did not impress me at all. So I think Santa Clara picks up a home win here. Let's go to a little bit of a rivalry game. Oklahoma and Nebraska. Again, they used to play in the Big 12 together. Now it's SEC versus Big 10, Ivetta.
This is probably my toughest pick at the Pentagon. So I don't know. These teams are just so close on paper that I think I'm going to give the slight edge to Oklahoma just because I think they have a slightly higher ceiling on the offensive side. I think they might try to push the pace here and try to get Nebraska's defense off kilter. But I don't know. Coin flip, Oklahoma.
I also have it as a coin flip, but the one thing is that Porter Moser doesn't lose non-conference games. The last 2 seasons, I think he lost 1 combined, and he already lost that one to Gonzaga pretty badly last weekend. So I don't think he'll lose 2 in a row. I have Oklahoma in this one.
Oklahoma times 3, yeah. I think these teams are like 42 and 41 in Torvik, so like very close. Xavier Brown has looked better than even I would have expected. St. Joe's transfer there, and he's been lighting it up so far. I'm going to go Oklahoma in this one as well.
I'm going to change it up and go Nebraska here. I just really thought Oklahoma looked very, very bad against Gonzaga. I didn't think they were able to handle Gonzaga's bigs. At one point, the points in the paint was just like a lot to a little. And I look at Rink Mass as a guy that can really confuse this Oklahoma team. Had that triple-double not too long ago. I know he's not like a bruising big man, and that's kind of what Gonzaga, I felt like they did to Oklahoma, but he's definitely a big man that can catch the Sooners off guard if they're not prepared for him. So I think that's the difference in this one. Give me the Cornhuskers here. Let's go to a game where I think I know who we're all going to pick, but maybe someone will pick an upset. Houston at Auburn. It's still a fun one to talk about because these were a couple teams that obviously have made Final Fours pretty recently, and they're having a rematch here on Sunday at 3.
Yeah, this is that Battleground 2K25 game in Birmingham. Auburn is 268th in three-point percentage, and Houston is 14th in the nation at defending the 3. I just think Houston's physicality is just going to prove to be too much for Auburn. They're going to avenge their home loss from last year when Auburn beat them 74-69 in Houston.
Yeah, I agree. I think Houston actually started the season pretty bad, and not bad by any means, but underwhelming compared to what a lot of people thought preseason. But they really bounced back last game. So I think they're comfortable now. The freshmen are looking a lot better. I have Houston in this one.
Yeah, as usual, the analytics love Houston. I'm not sure they're the true talent number 1 team in the country, but they're definitely top 3, top 5 at worst. Auburn with Stephen Pearl instead of Bruce Pearl, there's no way that I'm going to really pick them to win a game like this. I just don't trust them yet, so I'm going to go Houston.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. Jahad Pettiford, he's going to struggle at times this season trying to take over with no Janai Broom, just without the overall talent level that Auburn has had, especially in a game against this Houston defense. I just see him having a rough day from the floor. I honestly see Houston winning this game by 15 to 20 points. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Let's move on to VCU at NC State. Interesting here one. I know the Atlantic 10 has not had a good start to the season, but VCU is still a team that a lot of us have had on our radar. We think that they could be a team to beat in the A10. And then you got NC State with Will Wade there. They've been off to a hot start. This one's on Monday at 7 on the ACC Network. Might not jump off the page, but if you follow college hoops, this is actually a very fun matchup. Ivetta, who do you have winning this one?
NC State. NC State is ranked first in the country in effective field goal percentage. They've averaged 106 points per game. VCU's played a marginally tougher schedule so far, but they've got a pretty high turnover rate. So the way I see this is I think NC State's going to exploit that. I think they're going to force turnovers. I think they're going to disrupt their offense. And then NC State's just going to try to blow the doors off that building.
Yeah, I wish this game was at VCU because I think that would make this pretty much a toss-up, but we're not in charge of scheduling, unfortunately. I agree with everything you just said. I think NC State takes this one, and VCU's honestly looked pretty underwhelming to start the season. Kept it close with Utah State, but that game was pretty out of reach for most of it, so give me NC State.
NC State as well, yeah. Two teams with new coaches. NC State just looks farther along with more talent.
Yeah, I'm also going to take NC State here, and Ariel, I told you I had to do it. It's the last time. Jerry Dang.
Your last one.
Jerry Dang, Rochester Nate. Let's move on to some games on Tuesday. Again, we pick games through Tuesday, especially if there's some good ones, and there's definitely some good ones. Champions Classic here, Michigan State against Kentucky.
I'm on Kentucky here. This is a fun contrast stylistically. So I just think we're going to have too much offensive firepower. And in my opinion, for Michigan State to be able to win, it's going to come down to second chance points. They have to clog the paint. They have to control the glass. Kentucky wants to stretch the floor. I think they're going to get it done. I think it'll be a fun game to watch, but I think Kentucky gets it done.
I agree. And the big reason why is the three-point shooting for Michigan State. When you're at home, you're allowed to make one three-pointer in an entire game against a top 15 team. But on a neutral against a really good team in Kentucky, who Jalen Lowe might be injured. We'll see what happens with him. And they obviously have a couple other injuries. But I think the star power on this team is just going to overwhelm them.
You know what? I'll go contrarian a little bit here. I'm going to go Michigan State. I'm not sure what I loved out of Kentucky, especially in that Louisville game. They lost by around 8, but like Louisville did not fully. I mean, we've talked about this. Louisville did not have like their full like offensive firepower. Like I think there's more in the tank for Louisville. Maybe that's more of an indictment on Louisville than it is on Kentucky. But I think Michigan State is able to win this one.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie here. With the Champions Classic, it's fun and all when you move it around, but I think it probably hurts Michigan State the most when it's in New York City because this will definitely be a pro-Kentucky crowd from what I've seen in the past. So I don't want to call it a Kentucky home game. Look, there's going to be Spartans fans there, but Kentucky's going to have the crowd on their side in this one, especially being the first game. You're going to have other fans, going in there for the second game, and it's going to be pretty fun down the stretch of that one. So I think that's going to be enough to help Kentucky over the top because I do see it as a 50-50 split. I hate calling this because of the crowd, but I think it's going to have a pretty big factor as the game rolls along. Second game in the Champions Classic, Kansas and Duke. This one slated for 9 p.m. Ivetta, who's winning this one?
I'm going Duke here. This should be a pretty competitive game, but I like Duke. They've just looked better than Kansas to me. They actually won their Power 5 game. So I don't know. This one, I think Duke's going to get it done at MSG.
This could be the number 1 pick versus the number 2 pick in the draft. So that's pretty exciting between Darren Peterson and Cam Boozer. Duke and KU played last year. Duke was obviously a much better team at the end of the season, but Kansas still found a way to win. I got to go with my guys, the Kansas Jayhawks. I think they find a way to get it done. Bill Self just always knows how to coach in these big games. Even though we couldn't really see that UNC on a neutral court, I think they sneak one out.
I'm going to go Duke. I do agree that Kansas, it's hard to pick them to lose by more than a couple points, but I think that Kansas did not look great in that game against North Carolina. A lot of storylines there aside from that fact, but Duke has looked flawless so far pretty much. Going with the Blue Devils.
Ariel, I apologize heavily for this because I've already mentioned Jaden Bradley, Demarius Owens, and Jerry Dang, and I totally forgot. I'm going to take myself full for this. Melvin Council Jr., Rochester, New York. Give me Kansas. Let's go on to our game of the week. I'm done with that. I promise I'm done. Our game of the week, guys. UConn against BYU. This one at TD Garden in Boston. Kind of fun there, I must admit. UConn always plays a couple games at Madison Square Garden, but they have fans all over New England, so it's really cool that the Huskies get to at least treat their fans, north of Connecticut in Massachusetts and get a game in Boston. Obviously, AJ DeBansa in this one, kind of a primetime game for him. Who knows? Maybe the Celtics will end up picking him in the draft if they can get that high of a pick next year. You never know. This could be a preview of what's to come in Celtic green. But it's going to be a lot of stars on the court. It's going to be a high-level game. Dan Hurley and, of course, obviously BYU with DeBansa and Richie Saunders. Just a lot of names, a lot of faces in this one. Before we get to our picks, we'll kind of go around in a little bit of a discussion about this game. UConn and BYU. Again, my first one here, guys, is this isn't a matchup that we've really seen, right? Like, you see a lot of matchups, you see the Champions Classic, you see a lot of teams that play each other. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if these teams have played in a long, long time. I don't know what the series history is, but it isn't like we get to see this a lot. If Ariel, if you want to get on that, we can get an answer here. But I'll toss it to Ivetta first. When you get a matchup like this, how cool do you think this is for college basketball? Because it's not the typical one that we get, but it's two high-level programs.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, this is going to be the first test for both of these, the biggest test for both of these programs. And I think part of that is it's a psychological game for Dan Hurley. I think he's using it as, you've heard him kind of in the previews and stuff saying that BYU looks scary in the film and all this stuff. But I think it's a psychological game. I think he's using it to hype up his players, whether they win or lose. This is going to be like that game for them. If they go on to have a successful season, this is going to be like that learning experience, I think, for UConn.
Ari, I'll toss it to you next. Like, what are you thinking about this game? Feel free to dive deeper as well into it. Obviously, I had the question there about UConn and BYU and maybe what to expect. But I mean, if you want to dive deeper in this, like what are we really looking for maybe on the BYU side against a team with a championship DNA in UConn?
Yeah, first I want to start by saying after light research, I believe this is the first time that these two teams have ever played each other. So pretty exciting there. And the fact that BYU is even in these games after we haven't really seen a team like that since the Jimmer Fredette days is pretty exciting. But I think it comes down to defense versus offense. I mean, UConn's really thrives in both, especially offense. And BYU, they've kind of struggled on defense to start the season. We saw that be a little bit of an issue in the second half against Villanova. So can they step up defensively against a team that has a lot of scoring options, a lot of guys who can make shots, a lot of guys who can facilitate? I think that's what it comes down to. Villanova didn't really have those guys, and they definitely benefited off of that. But with Silo Stammery and Solo Ball and Alex Caravan, they'll just throw those guys at you. And if BYU can handle it, then I think they have a chance. So I'm really looking at how they can handle that defense versus offense.
I feel like to an extent as well, AJ DeBansa has been, in a way, overshadowed by the mass amounts of freshmen that have just been also performing at a super high level. And he's definitely he's averaging, I think, 18 or 19 points per game so far. But the thing is that he hasn't really made major storylines. I think the eye test against Villanova, I keep saying it, I think there's more in the tank there for AJ DeBansa. Also, for all the doom and gloom people about college basketball and college sports, we are getting so many high-level games in the first 2 weeks of the season. Can we just appreciate that? Because that is something that has actually been created by this NIL, by this new climate of college basketball, is all these high-level games right off the bat. And I love that. So I love that we're getting, like you said, just a clash of all these stars here in November, because we never used to get that.
I want to talk Dan Hurley for a little bit because I feel like there's a lot to talk about Dan Hurley. He's a coach that you either love him or you hate him. You truly do. It's one or the other. When you look at the star of this game, guys, it's AJ DeBanza. It's no one else, right? Like that's who we're looking at. That's the NBA prospect in this game. UConn's got probably one or two guys that are going to make a living in the NBA, but DeBanza's the guy. But then you look at Dan Hurley, and he's really the face of college basketball from a coaching standpoint because he literally makes the craziest faces of any coach in college basketball. And he's always in, I feel like you watch any Sports Center and you're going to see Dan Hurley and okay, he made this comment. He said this. Look at this. Is he good or bad for the game? That's my question, and then we'll pick. Ivetta, what do you think about that? Is Dan Hurley good or bad for the game?
I think he's good for the game. I think you need a villain.
Yeah.
So I think somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to bring attention to the sport in some off the court attention that so I think he's great for the game. I was watching something the other day about how he wrote his book and how he regretted a lot of the stuff from last year, a lot of the outbursts and all that stuff, and that kind of like led to their season tanking. But and now he's rejuvenated and he's fired up and all this stuff, but you can't take the Dan Hurley out of the Dan Hurley. So I feel like in these high octane games, we're still going to see, him yelling at the refs, him yelling at the fans, him just like you mentioned, all the faces, all the expressions and the gestures and stuff. So yeah, but I think he's good for the sport overall.
I 100% agree. When you think of college basketball, and this is one of the biggest differences between college basketball and the NBA, is that there's a lot of great players in college basketball, but they come and go pretty quickly. But one thing that stays is those coaches, and they're the ones who build the program. Those are the ones who maintain the success of the program. And what makes college basketball so great, especially Matt, your Big East back in the days, all these legendary coaches, you got Bobby Knight, you got Jim Boeheim, Jim Calhoun, and now Danny Hurley's kind of the face of that with a lot of these older coaches retiring. So when you have guys in college that no matter what, the transfer portal happens, guys go to the draft, guys graduate, you can come back every year and be like, I know Danny Hurley is going to be leading this team, then that's great for the sport, and that's great for viewership and great for everything else.
Yeah, couldn't agree with both of you guys more. He's a villain, but not in the sense where he's done these like horrible off the court things. And that's the greatest thing. Like he's a little bit of like a little bit of a prick sometimes, so to speak. But like he's not like doing these like horrible things. That's the kind of villain you want in this sport. And you love him because he's on your favorite team. You hate him because he coaches against you guys and beats you. Like that's exactly the storylines you want.
Look, if he was on any other team besides UConn, if he was coaching any other team, I think I would absolutely love him. But it makes it even better that he's coaching UConn for me because it's fun to dislike the antics, but I mean the respect is just there. Like if you don't respect Dan Hurley and you call yourself a college basketball fan, I want to know why. Because I think that you can get upset, you can maybe not like the way he carries himself at certain points, but you gotta respect that winning attitude, because in a time when we don't know how this whole college basketball landscape is going to change, you at least know that you have someone like that to make it very exciting and fun. Let's go to our picks, guys. Again, we can go rapid fire for this like we did for the other 10. Now that we are here for our picks, it is UConn and BYU at TD Garden. Ivetta, who do you have in this one?
Oh, this is tough. I went back and forth probably 4 or 5 times on this because I was looking at all these different factors. My concern is BYU's lack of depth. And I'm concerned with that. Obviously the UConn's more experienced. I read some tidbit that there's like 140,000 Mormons in New England or something that are all all going to come to the game. And obviously, so it's going to be a home court environment for UConn, but you never know. You never know. So I think it's going to come down to matchups, because I think there's a lot of uncertainties with which matchups are going to work, especially with obviously Debansa and then Saunders and Wright, and kind of how Dan Hurley orchestrates that. And is he going to be double teamed? You can't really put Caravan on him, so it's I think it's gonna BYU takes care of the ball really well. They don't turn the ball over. So it's I don't know. I was so torn. I think there's going to be a lot of adjustments too, because again, I think it's going to take a little while for them to figure that out. But I don't know. I think I would lean UConn, but I could easily see them being more bark than bite in this situation, and some of that better athleticism prevail, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think Dan Hurley knows now more than ever after disastrous Maui last year how important these November non-conference games are for the confidence of your team and just the overall resume of your team. So they scheduled pretty tough. This is the first of a pretty hard upcoming slate. They got Arizona on Wednesday, and then they play Illinois at the end of the month, and then they play at Kansas to start December. So really like the scheduling, and I think that he's really going to bring it us all in this game. Also, BYU, I just haven't been that impressed with them. They played well against Villanova for the first half, but I think the takeaway from that game is Villanova looked better than we thought, more than BYU is a top 10 team. And then last game they played Delaware at home. They trailed by 3 at half to a Delaware team who lost to a Division II team just a few days ago. So I think UConn gets it done. I think that experience really matters, and BYU might be a little shorthanded with some off-the-court incident that happened today. Yeah. So I don't think that'll make too much of a difference, but I think UConn still takes it.
No, I mean, when there's turmoil, instability in the program, that does make a difference. Because I was leaning BYU before this, but I am going to go with UConn. I just a more trustworthy pick. BYU has definitely had a long stretches of time throughout games where they've not looked good. I'm going to go with the Huskies as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think that Solomon Ball is a guy that we have to look at here. He's a guy that I consider him easily one of the best guards in the country. I think we haven't stated as well, Debansa is from near Boston. And so obviously it's a homecoming for him. So he's going to have, a lot of fans there rooting him on as well. Probably some people that'll be cool for him to experience that. But I just think UConn's experience, when you got Solomon Ball, when you got Caravan, when you got Terrace Reed, you can just name off the guys. Hurley's going to have them prepared. I think that's going to be enough. And I want to look at one more factor here, guys, because this is very interesting to me. BYU played 3 games in the Northeast last season. They played Providence, and they lost to Providence by 19 points last year. That's not too far from Boston. Okay, maybe that's just a one-time thing, right? Well, obviously, if you consider it Northeast, I'm considering it Northeast for BYU purposes. They played a game at Cincinnati when they have Cincinnati on the road, lost by 18 points. Then, in the NCAA tournament, they lose by 25 points to Alabama. I was at that game. It was in the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. So your 3 games in the Northeast, you lost by double digits. It wasn't even close with any of them. That's a little concerning. I know it's same team, some of the same players, but, new team. But it is the same head coach. I just want to make sure that Kevin Young is preparing this team for a pretty long travel for BYU, an environment that's going to be pro-UConn. And yeah, I just think that's going to be an interesting factor there. I mean, call it a neutral site if you will, but it's truly a road game for them, and I think that's going to factor in. So give me BYU here. Guys, those are our picks. Obviously, it's been fun picking these games, and again, we'll do this every week. Ivetta, thanks for coming on for this one, and thank you guys all for watching and listening, and we will talk to you here next time.